Hello, I'm Robert, and I'm going to talk about the things that most people don't know about how to protect yourself from COVID-19 and how to protect others around you. And this first one is about isolation. So I'd like to try and bring back memories for those of you who were following this in January. And back then, here in the United Kingdom, United States and places like that, we did appreciate how serious COVID-19 was. And there was this video where this young Chinese man in Wuhan looking after his wife at home with COVID-19. He also worked in a hospital looking after patients in a ward. And he was regarded, people looked at that video and they thought how brave he was to be looking after his wife at home. And he took all the precautions that he does in the ward at home. And that only makes sense. How does it make sense to go to a ward looking after COVID-19 patients and then go home and just socialise with your wife who's got COVID-19 and not take those precautions? And yet, throughout the United Kingdom, throughout the United States, throughout Europe, there are these people who are just looking after someone in their home with COVID-19, and in many cases they're just not taking any precautions. They just are fatalistic and saying, well, they've got it, we'll get it. But that's not the case. COVID-19 is really very different from flu. It spreads through these rare super spreader events, and it's the same in the whole household as it is outside the house. And if that super spreader event hasn't happened yet, and it might never happen, then you don't infect. And it's very common that in a household that the partner or the spouse doesn't get it. It's eccentric, this disease. They don't really know why it sometimes spreads to 4 or 5 people, and then other times it doesn't spread to anyone. And it's not so much a super spread person as a super spreading situation. So that's why if you get the symptoms and you are at home, you should be isolating. Now, if we go to, this is a good article by the New York Times. It interviewed Bruce Aylward, and he talked about how they do it in China. It is in China. This was just after he got back from the big international joint mission to study how it was being done in China and to try and find ways they could improve the way they're handling it in Wuhan. So this again was on the news in January. These big wards are converted stadiums, converted into wards, but not many people knew what these wards were for. It wasn't reported very clearly. These were the mild cases. As soon as if someone came into the hospital, then they stayed there. They didn't go out again if they had suspected COVID-19. They sat there waiting for their result. And way back in January, they didn't have the rapid tests we have in the UK now. They were using PCR, but they had got it so streamlined that their PCR, they had a round trip of 4 hours. So you go into the hospital, wait 4 hours, you get your positive test straight away on the spot. And that was in January. And I don't think hardly anywhere in Europe or the United States would be achieving that today. And yet the Chinese were doing that in January. And we could be doing that. It just means a matter of prioritising it. And then, as well as that, they got such fast turnaround that they got people being detected with COVID-19 only 2 days after symptoms, and then isolated on average. And this, that by itself hugely reduces the transmission. And in China, they found that 80% of the transmission is in the household. And the World Health Organization was saying the other day, it's still the same. In Europe, it's still 80% of the transmission is happening in households. So think what a difference it would make if you could cut off 80% of transmission. Your R0 would go right down to 0.2 or something if you could end all of that household transmission. And yet, we are not even, in the United Kingdom, they're not even thinking about trying to stop that. Not very much. At least, if they're trying, it's not very effective, because most of the people who contact me don't have a clue that you should even be trying to isolate if you're at home and with someone else in the home with COVID-19. This kind of fatalistic attitude that if someone else has got it, then you've got it. It's not like that. It's very, very different from flu. So that is the first of these things. I'm not sure what the number will be. I'm going to do these as separate short videos again. I did them before. I'm doing another rerun of these videos, so as to just try and keep them really short and straightforward and simple. So that's the first one, and we'll see how many there are. The next one is going to be about the severe symptoms. How you know okay, you're isolating at home, so now what are the warning signs that you've got to go in and you've got to immediately ring up emergency? And it's if you're breathless, but I'll just talk about that. That's another thing people just don't know.